All right, let's do it. Hi, how's it going? I'm going to be giving a talk as an introduction to OpenTelemetry. So, show of hands, how many people here have heard of OpenTelemetry? Cool. Keep your hands raised if you feel like you are an expert on OpenTelemetry. Okay, cool. So, my name is Jessica Garson. I can be found most places on the internet at Jessica Garson. If you're on Mastodon, I'm Jessica Garson at macaw.social. I'm a senior developer advocate at Elastic, but I've worn a lot of different hats here in the Python community and really excited to be here with you today giving this talk. So before I dive too deep into this, all of my code, all of my slides, everything can be available up on my GitHub here if you want to follow along with me. Everything I'll be talking about today is available up on my GitHub. So I will give you all a second to kind of scan that. So today we're going to be talking about observability basics. And then I'm going to talk about what OpenTelemetry is and why to use it. And I'm going to show how to work with it with both Django and Flask. And then we're going to talk about the state of OpenTelemetry in general. And we're going to talk about some conclusions and next steps. So I think a couple of other people told me that they had this experience too. But I had attempted to find a short tutorial on getting started with OpenTelemetry and Python. And I couldn't find more than a simple demo application. I'm going to take my jacket off because I think it's interfering with the mic. Cool. All right, awesome. So I had attempted to find kind of a short primer on how to get started with OpenTelemetry and Python, and really couldn't find more than a demo application. And looking at the demo application now, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. But I didn't get it at the time. So I asked my friend, maybe your friend, ChatGPT, to explain it to me like I was 5 years old. And it told me that OpenTelemetry was like a magical friend who watches me draw and takes notes on what crayons that they use and tells me how they work and if they perform and break. And like, that's kind of right, but it's also like not exactly how I would explain OpenTelemetry. So I'm hoping that you walk away from this talk with an understanding of what OpenTelemetry is, how to use it, and how to start integrating it into your applications. So before I kind of get there, us as Python developers, we don't talk a lot about observability. So show of hands if you feel like you understand observability really well. Cool. One hand is raised, and we're looking for an observability expert for my team here in Austin, so come talk to me after. But yeah, I feel like we don't talk about this a lot as Python developers. So a lot of my learnings on this I was learning this for the first time as I was diving into this. So observability helps you determine what's going on with your system and understanding kind of the why behind the state that you're in. And you look at this by analyzing the data that your system outputs. And so I like to think about this like I like to think about being a kitty mom. So how many people here can tell me what's happening to this cat? Yawning. Some people say belly rubs. I think it might be sneezing potentially. But the other day, I went out to see a show, and I came back, and my cat, and I was a couple of minutes late. I was about 7 minutes later than I typically am when I feed my cat. And I came home, and my cat's like, meow, meow, meow. And I'm like, yeah, what's going on, kitty? And she's like walking me to the food, and she's like, all right, cool. You're going to have to feed me now. And then she was meowing at the water, and she's like, I need water too, don't you know? And that's how I communicate with my cat. And I'm really aware of like what she needs based on the systems or based on the signals that she's outputting. And this is kind of like what happens with computers, if you think about it. We are aware of what's happening based on the error messages that we see, based on what's going on kind of behind the scenes. And all of the things that you print out, all of those like logs and things like that, all of that serves as hints as to what's happening with your system. And so really, part of this is just like figuring out like what's going wrong and what isn't happening as expected. And that helps you kind of figure out where the root causes of your issues are and how to work in that framework. But this goes beyond detecting problems. It's about figuring out who was impacted by things that go wrong. It's about figuring out how you got there and why it is the way it is. So I wanted to break down some common jargon around observability. So logs, they are records of events in a system. For most of us, our first program was a log. We printed hello world to the console, right? It's really anything that you could print out is a log. Metrics, they are quantitative measurements that track the performance and health of a system. They're aggregations, they're numbers. They're numbers that tell you about the system that you're working with. And then traces, they track the path and interactions of a request in a system. So an agent, this was another piece of jargon that I was like, what do you mean by observability agent? Like, what is this? So an observability agent, it really helps you it's an SDK or tool that collects, processes, and sends telemetry data from your system to an observability platform. I also heard the term instrumenting thrown around, and I was like, wow, it must be like making music or something, but that's not what instrumenting is. Instrumenting is the process of adding observability features to your application, and those are those traces, metrics, and logs that we just talked about. So OpenTelemetry. Can anybody tell me what OpenTelemetry is? Okay, no one? Cool, well, I'll tell you. OpenTelemetry is an observability framework. It is open source and vendor neutral. It is designed to work with any backend system. And it provides a set of standardized APIs, libraries, and tools that collect that telemetry data, those metrics, traces, and logs, such as, and it collects the telemetry data and sends it into a place that you can work with it. And that's whatever backend system that you choose to work with. And so really, OpenTelemetry enables comprehensive monitoring across many different services and platforms. And the reason why this is important is that logs alone simply are not enough sometimes. So I hear some laughs, and I relate really hard to this. So I actually was looking at some of my own logs recently, and I found this log that if I looked at it, I'm hitting a NASA endpoint. I wouldn't know what I was doing. I would assume I was like building a spaceship or something like that. And really, since a lot of us work with complicated interconnected systems, having that sort of visibility into what's going on is really important. And OpenTelemetry makes that easy in a vendor-neutral kind of way. And one of the things that I think is really cool about it is that it is designed to be future-proof. So how many people have a tool that they're like, oh my God, I love using it, and I'm going to be using it forever? Okay, no hands went up. Okay, a couple of hands went up. All right. Yeah. So yeah, JSON is future-proof, but the idea of OpenTelemetry is that it is also designed to be future-proof. It is designed to monitor whatever system you are using, and it is designed to kind of work with any technology, any backend system that may come about in the future. And I think that that's something that's pretty cool. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about OpenTelemetry is that it aims to be this kind of future-proof. And it actually got started in 2019 as a merger of two competing protocols, Open Tracing and Open Census, and it kind of encapsulated a lot of the work that was happening at the time around trace headers and a wire protocol, and it kind of took that work and kind of wrapped it under one umbrella to kind of aim to be that kind of future-proof. So let's get started working with OTel. There is some live demos, so hopefully, fingers crossed, the live demos work. If you see something, say something. I never feel as safe as I do in a room full of developers. So let me know if you see anything. Say something. Cool. So before we get to dive into that, the way that I like to think about it is that you have your Python application. And that sends out metrics, logs, and traces. And from there, OpenTelemetry is where it connects to an observability backend. So one of the first things I really struggled with inside of the OpenTelemetry umbrella was spans within traces. So like, what is this? What's going on here? And so it took me a while to kind of figure out what that was. Spans, they're the building block of traces. Ron Nathaniel, in his talk from PyCon 2023, refers to a trace as a family and a span as a person in a family. And I really like that. And so I was like really thrown off by this. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what's going on here? There's like a name and a parent span ID. And then it took me until I actually saw it printed out in my console that I was like, Oh, cool, like a span within a trace. I get it, cool, cool, cool. And this is actually, like, I literally took a picture of it while this was happening. This is a span inside of a Django context, and you can actually see the span ID and the trace ID, and I'm like, okay, cool, I know what kind it is. This is like when I would add a new item to a to-do list, and yeah, cool, I get it, cool. So that's for me. For the examples I'm going to use today, I'm going to be using the Elastic distribution of OpenTelemetry for Python. I'm using Elastic because I work for Elastic, but you could use any backend observability provider of your choosing. Cool. All right, and so here's some documentation on what I'm going to be using today. So if you're interested in this, you could talk to me about it. It's basically just a customized version of the main OpenTelemetry Python package, and it just makes it easier to work with Elastic and OpenTelemetry. But again, everything I'm showing could be done many different ways. So how many people have built a to-do list application that looks something like this? Yeah. So this is very near and dear to my heart. I was talking to Kojo earlier, picking on you, Kojo. We were in a Django tutorial, I think somewhere around 2016, and we were building something like this back in the day. So yeah, so we're going to build this. And so the first thing that we'd want to do is we want to install Django environment to work with environment variables, Elastic OpenTelemetry, and that's that Elastic distribution of OpenTelemetry package I was just talking about, OpenTelemetry instrumentation Django, and then from there we would actually want to type another command, OpenTelemetry bootstrap action equals install, and that will install some extra things. So there are two ways to do instrumentation. Automatic instrumentation will automatically modify your application to insert monitoring code into it, which is pretty awesome. So the first thing you have to do to get set up with it is that you just want to set some environment variables. So for Elastic, you want your Elastic API key and your Elastic endpoint, and that would be how you would set up your .env file. And then from here, you'd want to modify your Django settings.py file to take the environment variables and process them. And then from there, all you really want to do is add this Django instrumenter.instrument to your manage.py file. And that's really all you need to do for automatic instrumentation. So let's get started running the code. Cool, so we can run this. This is where I hope the demo gods are on my side. Cool. All right, we're going to give it a second, because it always takes a second. It could take up to 5 minutes, actually, I learned once the hard way. So, cool. Yay for live demos. OK, no services. I thought that might happen. Cool. Yeah, this always happens, but there's something that we can do. We can actually go back longer than 15 minutes. Or actually, we'll continue on. We'll wait for this. Yay for live demos. Nah, I've done this a bunch. So as I said, it could take up to 5 minutes. Cool. OK, cool. Well, we'll come back. Hopefully that works. But if not, I have screenshots. I got all the things. So cool. So that's how you would run the code. So manual instrumentation, that requires just like actually writing the code to make the instrumentation happen. So you might be wondering, like, when would you want to use manual instrumentation? And the reason is sometimes automatic just doesn't cover everything that you're looking for. Sometimes automatic instrumentation just, you know something about your system that you know that you need to like have more coverage in one area as opposed to another. When automatic instrumentation is really good is when you have been working with like a system and it has no monitoring and you just want to get started. That's really great. Sometimes also for like SRE type roles, it's really great for that. And then manual just allows you to have more control. So if you're doing a lot of development, if you're doing a lot of custom development, you can actually use it that way. So we're going to go back and we're going to see if the live demo did actually work. Cool. No, did not. But let's do the cheat method, because I did test everything before. Let's go back. Yeah. Let's do 40 minutes ago. Cool. And we'll do update. Yeah. So we have one service. Cool. And then if we go to service inventory, cool. Yeah, to-do list auto. And so we can kind of see everything in here. And we see the index and all of that. And if we actually click here, we can actually see all of that up and running. Cool. So I'm actually going to run just to for the delay, we'll get started with the managed PY, and we'll go back to that before we get to the Flask instrumentation. So the first thing that you'd want to do with, if you're using manual instrumentation, is you're going to want to delete that Django instrumenter.instrument. And then from there, the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to update your views.py file. So you really want to actually write the code in here. So from here, you'd actually want to put the tracer in to get all the tracing information. From there, you can set a meter to create some metrics to kind of figure out how many requests to views, and then you can actually measure the duration of view execution and things like that. And then from there, you can actually have all of that in there as well. And then from here, you can actually write some logic to add more to the adding items. And then from here, you can actually have everything up and running, and you can kind of see everything from here. And then from here, you can update your models.py file just to kind of make sure that everything is kind of in there. And then from here, you can run the code. So let's go back here. And actually, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go in here, and we can actually see this running. And actually, we can go back to over here. And we can go to 8080. And yay for live demos. And 8,000. We can open that up too. So yeah, cool. All right, so now if we go back into services, cool, so we still see that one. Cool. I have some videos too that I could show you at the end of this that have all the live demos up and running, because I've been burned by the live demo gods before. So yeah, let's do that, and let's do, it's 8080, cool. Yep, cool. And let's actually add a new span here. Hi. Awesome, cool. And so from here, let's try this again. Yay for live demos. Cool, now we see to-do list manual, so we can actually see everything up in here, yay. Cool. I try my best, Yay for live demos, and we can actually see all the spans and everything up and running, cool. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Flask. So yeah, one of the things, and this is actually one of my favorite parts of this, is that there is no code instrumentation for automatic instrumentation in Flask. This, I think, is awesome. So you might be wondering, what do you mean by no code? So really, all you need to do is you need to pip install Elastic OpenTelemetry, and then from here, you can actually do that same OpenTelemetry bootstrap install. You set some environment variables, and then the only thing you have to do is run your code a little bit differently. So instead of running Flask run, you would actually just do OpenTelemetry instrument Flask run. And that's all you need to do it. And my understanding is that the reason why this happens is because of a trick with the way that the command, or the way that the Python path works, is my understanding. So let's run this. Cool. And let's go here. And so yeah, this is that automatic instrumentation. And let me show you what this looks like inside of here. So you can actually, not this one. Yeah, so not that either. Let me go to my GitHub. And let me go to my repositories. Cool. How's it going? Cool. And so if we actually can take a look at the slides here, or and if we take a look under automatic instrumentation, we can actually see that there is nothing about any sort of monitoring code in here. It's just kind of everything that you see here. It's your typical Flask application. So now, if we go into services, we actually see our Flask to-do list auto, and we see everything kind of auto-instrumented for us, which is super, super cool. Yay for that. All right, cool. So manual instrumentation is a little bit different. With manual instrumentation, you actually have to write the code, very similar to how we did it in Django. Let me show you what that looks like. So if we go into the same, sorry, lots of windows open. Yeah, cool. So if I go into Flask and into manual instrumentation, and I look at here you see I've imported lots of things from OpenTelemetry. You can also see that I actually have to write all the monitoring code. So I have to set up my trace exporter, my span processor, and everything like that. And then I have just kind of everything. You see me setting all the traces, setting everything up, and actually kind of working with it in this context, which is pretty cool. Let's talk a little bit about another way of doing this. So you can actually run an OpenTelemetry collector. And this basically is a YAML file that you set up that basically allows you to kind of work with many different backends and things like that. So let's actually take a look. We actually have an example collector that I have on my GitHub that just shows what it looks like. But we also have an OpenTelemetry demo set up that you can actually run that shows a more realistic demo application, and it's forked off of the main OpenTelemetry demo. That's pretty awesome. And so you can actually kind of play with the collector in that way. And then from here, you can actually run this over at OTel demo.elastic.co. So if we take a look here, this is a Python recommendation service. But if we look at the services, here we actually see we have tons of services that are available. And if we click where it says recommendation service, you can actually see all of the transactions and everything. And there's a link to how to run this on your own machine if this is something that you're interested in. I always like showing it because I find it to be a really interesting kind of example of what a more realistic application would look like. Cool. So you might be wondering, what's going on with OpenTelemetry? It's a really new project. It's a young project. I've been only working with it for about a year, and I found that in my time working with it, it's only gotten better and smoother. One of the things that's really interesting is it's designed to be future-proof, but many companies are still adapting it, figuring it out. I know with Elastic, it was kind of difficult the first time I tried to use it, and now we've actually created a lot more tooling, like the Elastic OpenTelemetry distribution, that just makes it a lot easier to work with, and I know other companies are in the same space. Also, if we take a look at the status here, we can actually see from here that it is something that's just kind of it's in development in different places. You can see here that for traces, it's stable. For metrics, it's stable. But for logs, it's still in development. And my understanding is that's how the development of OpenTelemetry has gone so far. Cool. So yeah, some closing thoughts for the last 2 minutes. OpenTelemetry is an open source vendor-neutral framework. It is designed to integrate with any backend system. It is very easy to start instrumenting your code, and it is highly configurable and extensible. It scales well from large applications to small applications. And let me know if this talk inspires you to build anything. I'm Jessica Garson on most platforms. Again, all of my code, everything like that. I'll actually put some videos up to you just because we had some technical difficulties for the live demos. You can see it here. And thanks again. And I think I have 1 more minute, actually. 1 minute and 25 seconds. Is that true? OK, cool. I think I might have forgot to run something. Is that true? Did I run the last demo? No, I didn't. OK, cool. Let's run that. Let's run the manual instrumentation demo. Hold on 1 second here. OK, cool. So let me run that. Yay. So let's go. Let's open it up. Cool. I'll add a to-do list item. Cool. And then, yeah. Let me go to Elastic. Cool. You're probably like, yeah, I've seen you do this bunch. Cool. And from here, actually, it's not the right one. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, I have 16 seconds, which is super fun. So we can go into overview. And then if we click where it says services, we should see all 4. And we go to show service inventory. We actually see Flask to do manual. And we see that it all kind of worked. So yeah, cool. Thanks, y'all.